The 2013 Legendary Leader is Peter Diamandis. He's the chairman and CEO of XPRIZE. He's the co-founder and executive chairman, director of Singularity University. Now this week, Peter has had an unavoidable family emergency. He's with his father, that's a good thing, that's where he should be. He's unable to be with us. But his dear friend of many years, Bob Richards, is here to accept Peter's award and say a few words. And after that, we're going to view a video that Peter sent for us tonight. So Bob, would you please come up at this time? Come on up. We have this photo opportunity here. Oh, I think you should...
It's not the right size.
It's not, well, try it. You could try it on for size.
How's that?
Is that okay?
Yes.
All right, there we go. And the midget that wore it. Okay, thanks. Well, Bob, why don't you take a few minutes either here, or I'll get this out of your way.
Thank you.
Okay.
So everyone, it's a great honor to be here at Churchill, and in particular to accept this award on behalf of my dear friend of 30-something years, 32, I think. We're, I think, 2 years old when we met. That's not true. We were actually, we were undergraduate students, and you know, when I couldn't have done it without you, is a sentiment that I think I feel personally towards Peter. It was, you know, Peter's a master of first causes. He causes a lot of things to happen, not just game-changing ideas, organizations. It was a letter that he wrote in the pages of the editorial letters to the editor of Omni magazine. Some of you remember that? Back in the early 80s. And he was a graduate student, no, he was an undergraduate student at MIT at the time, studying microbiology and aerospace engineering. And he was driven to reach out to students like himself who had been impassioned by the accomplishments of Apollo and had been disappointed that the vision of the future that had been promised, that false dawn that happened, that students could change this. And he wrote this letter so passionately that students should unite around the world and really grab a hold of that future that we deserve and we should make happen. And there was another undergraduate student up in Toronto, Canada, it happened to be me, that read that letter that led to a lifelong friendship that changed my life and so many others because of Peter's vision and drive. To understand Peter, you need to understand, and you know, the tapestry of what he's accomplished reaches far and wide. But to understand what really, really drives Peter, you have to understand his passion for space, which is the thing that has brought us together for all these many years. You know, the vision of a future undaunted by the limits of our planetary boundaries, a future that's not just a random walk of history, but is one of abundance and possibility that we can choose to make happen. Imagining a thing to be and setting about to make it so has been the history of Peter's efforts over the last 30 years. We created together two universities, International Space University back in the 80s, more recently the Singularity University, located here in Silicon Valley. Many student groups, many nonprofits, many for-profits that became nonprofits, some nonprofits that became for-profits. And all in all, an amazing roller coaster ride. Peter, I think, has, maybe more than anything else, pointed out the power of incentivization, of incentive prizes, and his creation of the XPRIZE Foundation, which originally was a prize for the first private space flight into space. 1986, when the XPRIZE was announced on the Arches of St. Louis, it had been a result of about a year effort after Peter had read The Spirit of St. Louis, written by one Charles Lindbergh. And you know, how many thousands, tens of thousands of people had written that book? Had read that book. But Peter recognized that there was an aspect in that book, encoded in that book, that was absent in our current society. That Charles Lindbergh had endeavored to win a prize. Didn't just wake up one morning and say, I think I'll fly across the Atlantic Ocean from New York to Paris. He was incentivized for a prize. And in the passion to try to understand why the space industry had not experienced the same type of innovation that the aerospace industry had experienced, it was the application of these prize incentives to space that created the XPRIZE Foundation and led to Spaceship One piercing the blue skies and leading for the first time a private sector company, small team of individuals, making history happen and putting for the first time a private astronaut into space that created a whole revolution. We call it the personal spaceflight revolution. And the many, many prizes since that the XPRIZE Foundation has inspired. It was more recently that the creation of Singularity University continued that pattern of bringing together amazing people, people that are not unfamiliar to a group like this, and giving them the passion and the reason to believe that the future is one of abundance and possibility, and as eternal optimists, one that we can, each of us, play a role in making happen. Let's listen to Peter tell us a little bit about his own motivations and his own words. If we could please roll that video. Thank you very much for this award on behalf of Peter Diamandis.
Hi everybody, this is Peter Diamandis, and a sincerest thank you to the Churchill Club for this honor. I'm sorry I'm not there in person. My dad has been in and out of the ICU this week, and it's been a difficult week at best. First of all, the notion of a legendary leader is something that I feel very honored about, but difficult to pin on myself. I'm someone fundamentally who's just always pursued my boldest and dearest dreams, and what's driven me is seeing a world the way I think it should be and going out and doing everything I know possible to make it happen. All of this comes from a deep-seated passion and belief that we're living in a day and age where you can make your boldest dreams come true. For me, it started as a child, passionate about Star Trek and Apollo and wanting to go to space, and then giving up on NASA being the mechanism to get me there, and then just in my heart of hearts, believing that I could do something to not only get myself there, but get others there, and then having some small successes, and that addiction to that level of success then drives you to want to do the next bigger and bigger thing. If I think about who my mentors have been, they've been the characters in science fiction novels. They've been the works of Heinlein, they've been the works of Roddenberry. They're the people who see the world as it should or could be, and then paint that picture so vividly that you want to go out there and make it happen. And that's driven me all my life, and I know so many others. And so when I think about the results of the XPRIZE or Space Adventures or Planetary Resources, the organizations I've been in and part of, Singularity University, it's painting that picture of the future and then just in a serial fashion knocking down boundary after boundary, blockade after blockade, until you hit the fundamental laws of physics, and then making something happen. Because ultimately anything big and bold is hard and difficult and impossible and science fiction until you make it science fact. So, that's who I am in my heart. And I believe that now, today, there is nothing that we cannot do. Whether it's to go and mine the asteroids, extend the human lifespan, wipe out poverty on this planet. There is no challenge, and in fact the most important thing we need to do is change the conversation from one about complaining about problems to one about solving problems and making your vision happen. I think my dad was a role model for me, is a role model for me. He was born on a small island in Lesbos in Greece, grew up with nothing, literally tending goats and picking olives to keep his family going, and he went from there to the first person off his island to go to medical school, and then ultimately to the United States. And that journey of him starting at such a basic fundamental level and becoming a successful New York physician, for me is the equivalent of me going to Mars and beyond. So I think about that. And I have over the time mentored entrepreneurs, really, people who have a dream, someone who I see as committed to making that dream with the same passion and thirst that I have. And when I see that, I love it. I cater to it. And I'm honored that at Singularity University, for example, every year we have a crop of amazing people that I get a chance to spend time with. And every year I try and bring a couple of those into my life. Over the last 20 years, some of them have become my partners, CEOs of companies I've co-founded, and I'm honored about that. So, I don't know, I'm just someone who is a kid. I feel like I'm a 25-year-old kid going after my dreams. And I think that's the beautiful thing about life right now is that there is no dream too big, and there is no challenge that we cannot overcome. So I thank you all. I wish you an amazing evening, and I look forward to seeing you all in person very soon.